This is Mr. Hanna. Welcome to the format. Factoring quadratics a not equal to 1. So let's do a quick review. Let's factor a quadratic when a equals 1. Recall that we took the back number. This was your c. Okay, remember this is ax squared plus bx plus c. So this is the factor pairs of c. And notice it's always a combination of two numbers. That's why we call it factor pairs of c. So we take 24 and we write it as its factor pairs. Well, 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. And when I say factor pairs, I mean the integers. Okay, there are decimals or fractions that would multiply to 24. We're not considering those. Only the integer factor pairs of c. And then, depending on whether c is plus or minus, we add or subtract these. If c is minus, we're going to subtract these to try to get the middle number, the b. If it's a c is plus, like it is here, we're going to add them. So notice that 1 plus 24 is 25, 2 plus 12 is 14, 3 plus 8 is 11, 4 plus 6 is 10. I had a 10 in the middle, so that's the factor pair that I'm going to use. So there's my x and 4, x and 6, but it was a minus 10, so I needed a minus 4 and a minus 6. Now how does that work? With that being a plus, well remember, a minus times a minus is a plus. So there's your minus 4 times minus 6 plus 24. I've got a minus 6x and a minus 4x. And what do those add to? There's your minus 10x, which is your middle term, and then x times x is x squared, so we factored it correctly. But notice we only had to work with c. When a is not equal to 1, we can't just work with c anymore, okay? Now, what I did here is I put an example of two binomials, but I moved the numbers around. Here, the plus 3, here the minus 5, so then I put the minus 5 over with this 2x, and the plus 3 over here. Please notice that 8x squared, and minus 15 and minus 15 are the exact same. The only thing that's now changing is the middle term. That's because our combination of multiplication changes. See here, we've got 2 times minus 5, that's going to be minus 10x. Well, 3 times 4 is plus 12x. 12 minus 10, there's your plus 2x. Now here, I've got what? That's a minus 20x, right? And then 2x times 3 is a plus 6x. And minus 20 plus 6, there's your minus 14x. So if you get these numbers in the wrong order, even though you can get to the 8x squared and 15, you don't match that middle term, you factored incorrectly. And that's where I think a lot of students start to go wrong because they're like, wait, I got the first and the last term, how do I get this middle term? And then they start panicking because they're not really following the steps. This is why you have to have a process and trust your process. Life is a life like that. Yes, sometimes there's variations and things, but there's general patterns you learn to follow in life. And if you follow those, most tasks aren't so bad, okay? This is included in that. So what we do to factor this is we actually add two steps. I call it the AC method. You can look up AC method. Some people call it the X cross method. Notice I made an X here, okay? So what you did, let's say we're going to factor here, and now I've got 2x squared. Let's do a minus 18, and let's do a minus 13x in the middle. Okay, so what you would do is remember this is my A, and this is my c. So we're going to do 2 times negative 18. So 2 times negative 18 is negative 36. Now, this is similar to this problem now, where now I'm going to factor pair negative 36. So we're actually factor pairing AC now, if you want to think of it that way. So it's one extra step. And just instead of factor pairing c, I multiply a times c, and then I factor pair. So I got a 36 there. So the factor pairs are what? 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 6, 4 and 12, and should be 6 and 6. Okay, whoop. That was supposed to be 3 and 12, that's 4 and 9. And this is where things get a little interesting. See, if you're not used to factor pair numbers, it's really easy to kind of get them mixed up. You see, even I'm not immune to making mistakes. So that's why you have to be very careful. Even if you know what you're doing, if you're not careful on how you do it and take your time, you can make mistakes. But now notice I was checking. I double checked my numbers, 1 times 36, 2 times 18. Oh, yeah, I would have seen 3 times 6 is 18, so I would have fixed that. 3 times 12, and I would have fixed that. 4 times 9, 6 times 6. Now, once you got your factor pairs, now you do the same thing, add or subtract. Well, this is a minus 36, so that subtracts to 35, that subtracts to 16, that goes to 9, that goes to 5, that goes to 0. Well, what do I have in the middle? I have a 13. Uh-oh. It's what? Prime. In this case, none of these went to what I had. So now let's change that then. okay? Since that was prime and none of these there, see, this number has to be one of those. If it's not, that's when you have a prime polynomial. That's how this process works. If you follow your steps and trust your math, if you can't match that middle number to that one, this doesn't factor. 2 here and 13 and 18, no greatest common factor. That would have been a prime polynomial, similar to 7 being a prime number. Why? Because it's only can be factored to 1 times 7. But let's say this was a 5 here now. Okay, so since that's a 5, what do we want? We want 4 and 9. But here's the problem. We don't, 4 times 9 is 36, not 18. So now, since we multiplied this by 2, we have to divide each of these factor pairs by 2. This will simplify to 2. Oh, we need a minus 36. We need a really what? A minus 5, right? So that was a minus 9 plus 4. Now you can either do the signs after you simplify these or before. I'll leave it up to you which order you want to do it. I probably should have done it first, but I get so concentrated sometimes on my division step that I forget to put the signs in, so I put them in last. Okay, I've been doing this a long time, so the order doesn't really matter to me, but that's where you have to make a decision. Like, do I want to get the signs first or simplify these first and then put the signs? So see here, negative 9 plus 4, that was my minus 5. So that doesn't simplify, it stays as negative 9 halves. 4 over 2 goes to 2. So now how do I factor that? Well, if it's a whole number, you're just going to write x, since that's a plus 2. There you go. Now over here, what do? The denominator goes in front of the variable. So this will become 2x, and then you put the minus 9, and now you're factored. So it's very similar to this process. It's just you're working with the factor pairs of AC. And then to get it back, to undo the multiplication of 2, you have to divide both of these by 2. Okay, now very important with this, if you're going to do the AC method, okay, make sure you take the greatest common factor out first. Because if you don't take the greatest common factor out, it's going to simplify twice and then you're going to be stuck and that's not going to work. Greatest common factor has to come out first. Okay, now in this case I didn't have a greatest common factor, so I was okay, but you need to take that out first. And that actually helps in 2 ways, because this number can get really big. A times C can get really big. You can get numbers like as high as 2, 3, 400, and factor pairing those when you're not used to them, that can really become an interesting exercise. And sometimes you miss the factor pair that they use. Even I have some problems with that sometimes. Now, again, I know what to do, but sometimes doing it, depending on the numbers, becomes more difficult. So this is why you have to trust your process. Factor pairs of AC. If you're good at factor pairing C, it's the same process. Do they add or subtract to the middle number? Okay, then you pick the signs. Similar to what we're doing over there. Over here, we would have been done. But here, then the extra step, we have to divide by 2 and simplify, and then if it's a whole number or an integer, we put x plus or minus that number, okay, depending if it's plus or minus. In this case it was a plus 2, right? So x plus 2, and then if it's a fraction, the denominator goes in front of the variable, okay? Now this is something I want you to kind of look over. Maybe what you can do is practice factoring these with the x cross method. 8 times negative 15 is going to be 120. That's a very common number with the AC method, so 120, factor pair that, and then try to see if you can see which factor pairs get there, and then work backwards and see if you can get to these. You know the answer because we went forward. See if you can practice this method to go backwards, okay? And then this is where it's helpful. Sometimes you look up a worksheet that has the trinomials out there, and they give you the answer, and then you just practice this method, and then you just work through the steps. If you have to watch the video again, watch it again. Factor pairs of AC. Do they add or subtract the middle number? Get the signs on them. Divide by the A. Simplify. If it's an integer, x plus or minus that number. If it's a fraction, you put the denominator in front of the x, and then you put your other number. Okay, so hopefully you can see the steps here. Go through it a few times. Start practicing. It may take a while. Okay, this tends to be where a lot of Algebra 1 students really struggle, and where actually their algebra careers kind of hit a dead end. Okay. A lot of students never get this, and this thing, factoring is one of the key components of algebra, and it just doesn't go away. In Algebra 2, they use factoring all the time. In fact, some problems, you'll be factoring 6 polynomials just to get through to get the answer. So instead of just 1 factoring, you got 6. So you can see if you're not good at factoring, now the problems just become too much. So work through this, try to see it. This is how you factor quadratics A not equal 1, or a 1 method. There's other methods too. But this is the one that I've seen that most students grasp because it builds on this, okay? So they're very related. And I actually do it a different way, but I've never found I think I've only ever found one student who understood my way. All the others struggled with it. And then I found some teachers teaching this way, and that seemed to be a common method, and most students seem to get that. So I've stuck with this. I saw what they did, I adopted it, and there you go. So AC method, X cross method. Hopefully this helps. Anyway, this has been Mr. Hanna with What the Format. Thank you for watching. Happy mathing.